Just last week, it came to my attention that Sons of the Forest was going to be leaving early access after just 1 year. And at first glance, that might seem like something to praise, and it certainly is because most early access survival games linger in early access for 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 years before releasing. Sometimes they never finish. So that's definitely something to applaud. But after seeing this post, which was released actually in November, and I guess I just missed it, it says, "Hey everyone, today we're announcing that Sons of the Forest will release 1.0 will release February 22nd, 2024 after just 1 year in early access. We're also excited to announce that Sean Ashmore has joined the cast and will be voicing Timmy as we expand his role in the game and story. In addition to story updates, new features, and polish, version 1.0 will include the final question mark piece. After tomorrow's patch, we will continue to release hotfixes as needed, but the team will be focused on bigger content release for 1.0. Thank you to everyone who has joined us so far in early access journey. We're really excited for what we have in store for you in the 1.0 and beyond. The team at End Night." So while that sounds like a great thing, 1 year in early access, that date, after I saw it and I thought about it for a second, it struck a chord with me because I realized that it is also the date that another big game is coming out. Now, before I talk about why I think they chose this release date as intentionally and not just because they wanted to have it out in 1 year, I really think that they picked that date specifically, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. So before I do that, I want to give a quick recap of the release of the Sons of the Forest and kind of my experience with the game. I did not play the game. I had it on my wish list, and I decided after seeing some early gameplay of it that I was going to basically just wait for it to be finished before playing it. I think I was playing some other games at the time anyway. I did watch a couple of friends play it and saw their experiences, and I just decided at the time that for me, I just wanted to wait for it to be finished. So what were the positives of the release and what were the negatives? The positives, as you can see, it currently has 154,000 reviews, 85% of which are positive, and the last 30 days there's over 3,800 and they're 90% positive. So the most recent reviews have actually been better than the overall reviews. Now, interestingly enough, when this game first released, and I checked it the first couple of days, there were a lot of positive reviews with very little playtime, like 0.1 hours, 0.2 hours, 0.3 hours, something like that. Essentially, somebody booted the game up, played it for a few minutes, and then just went back out and left a positive review. And I think a lot of that was riding off the nostalgia of The Forest. The Forest, when it came out in 2018, was kind of unique for its time, and then it's one of the highest rated survival games, one of the highest rated games of all time on Steam, with a 95% overwhelmingly positive review score, over 400,000 reviews in total. So I kind of feel like a lot of people were riding off the nostalgia of that game, and what they did was they just left a positive review because they wanted people to play the sequel. What ended up happening was, over time, after a couple days, after a couple weeks, as time went by, the review score for Sons of the Forest slowly started dropping. It was in the 90s, I believe, on the first day, and it just slowly started dropping. I think it got as low as the low 80s, maybe actually below 80 at some point, and now it's creeped back up with the recent review scores. But basically, once people had enough time to be able to play through the game and see what it had to offer, the realization came that it was really not innovative like the original game. It wasn't unique like the original game. In fact, it was very similar to the original game. It's got a new map and kind of a new story, but a lot of it feels samey. I've played through The Forest, most of it. I think I've completed like 95% of it. I never finished the very end of it. But for what I saw from Sons of the Forest and from people that I know that played both of the games, they said the sequel just felt really similar to the first one, and it was almost like a copy paste, and they just changed some things around, like making the map bigger. But the story is essentially the same. It just has different almost characters in it. The first game you're saving somebody, the second game you're trying to save somebody. So it's very familiar. The other thing was, once you played through and got past the opening, I guess, a couple hours of Sons of the Forest, you would realize that there really wasn't much to it. In fact, a friend of mine was playing it. He played through it one time, and then he decided he wanted to see if he could beat it the second time on hard mode, pacifist. That meant he was going to not kill anything in the game except for I think there were 2 mobs you have to kill to progress the story. And I watched him stream this. He finished the game on hard mode in like 2 hours and 20 minutes, I believe was the time, somewhere around there, without killing any enemies except for the 2 that you had to kill. He was never attacked in the open world by any of the enemies because just for whatever reason, they just didn't attack him. And he was able to complete the game. Just the release of the game, the content at release just felt kind of bare bones. There were some changes like the building system and being able to chop up wood and build some custom stuff. That kind of looked like it was interesting, but the reality is, just like the original game, you can beat this entire game without building anything. In the original Forest, I was able to complete almost the entire game by building just a tiny little setup area off on a little island where the mobs couldn't get to me, and I was able to beat almost everything. I would just go over there, was safe. In Sons of the Forest, you can just wander around with your little tent or whatever it is, sleep when you need to, and then just gather food as you're wandering around because there's so many resources. All the resources do respawn. They did at the time when the game was released. I'm not sure if that's been changed or not, but essentially it was almost like a easy mode survival game. There really wasn't much to it, and the enemy AI, from what I saw, obviously could have been a lot better. Hopefully that's improved for 1.0. I do plan on trying the game at some point in the future, but because of when it's actually releasing in the 1.0, that's not going to be happening. And then also, in addition to that one friend, everybody I know that played both the Forest and Sons of the Forest kind of agreed that they just felt like the Sons of the Forest was not even close to as good as the original. So with that in mind, what I want to do is I want to show you some interesting statistics for the game, and then I want to talk about why I think the release date that they're choosing was intentional and it doesn't have anything to do with getting it out in 1 year. So this is the Steam player chart for Sons of the Forest, and as you'll see, it had an all-time player peak of over 414,000 players. That is massive. That is probably in the top 20 as of like a few. If this was like when it probably happened a year ago, it might have been in the top 10 at the time. I just checked the top 10, and the top 10's like 600,000 now. But at one point, this would have probably been in the top 10 or very close to the top 10 of all-time peak concurrent players. You'll see that it currently has, as I'm recording this, a little under 10,000 players, which isn't insignificant, and it's been averaging 15,000. But looking at the Steam chart, this is very typical of many early access survival games. They have a lot of players at the release, and then it just falls off until the game releases. In this case, however, there's been really no big spikes. Normally what will happen is during early access, the survival games will get a couple of major updates, and you'll see a spike in players. That's not happened here. There's also, I guess, been no free weekends. Free weekends will certainly bring in new people, some of those will be converted to sales. So there's just been nothing. It's just kind of been flatlined, and it's just been maintaining its player count. So we'll see. It'll probably spike when it releases, or maybe it won't. So this is the most wishlisted upcoming Steam games, all of them from 1 to whatever. And what I want to point out to you is number 11 on this list. That is Nightingale. Nightingale is developed by Inflection Games. Inflection Games is former BioWare developers, so they are former AAA developers, or they are AAA developers. This game is scheduled to release on February 22nd, 2024, the exact day that Sons of the Forest is planned to leave early access. Now, this could be coincidence, but honestly, I'm the kind of person, I just don't believe in coincidences. And I honestly think that the developers of Sons of the Forest chose to release their game on that day because they feel like because it's going to be overshadowed by Nightingale. I honestly expect the 1.0 version of Sons of the Forest to just kind of not really be that game changing. I don't think they're going to completely overhaul the game and make it what a lot of people wanted it to be. Obviously, like you saw, it does have lots of positive reviews, but I believe a lot of those are from players of the original game that just played it for a few hours, left a positive review, and then just never came back to it. As you can see by the Steam chart, it's fallen off pretty hard. But releasing this on the same day as the 11th most wishlisted game, and looking at this list, I think this is the 3rd most wishlisted survival game, because Enshrouded is a survival game. This Power World game might be a survival game, or it's got survival aspects. Pure survival games, Enshrouded and Nightingale are the two on here that are the biggest for the upcoming. And just releasing it the same day as Nightingale just seems very curious to me. I think they chose that on purpose. I honestly think that the 1.0 release of Sons of the Forest is going to end up being underwhelming, and having it released on the same day as Nightingale is just a way of kind of burying the lead there. They've already made the bag. They've sold millions of copies of Sons of the Forest, with 150,000 reviews or whatever it was. They've sold millions of copies of this game. They've made the money they needed to make. They'll finish the game. They'll release it. And honestly, it almost felt like everything I've seen from between the Forest and Sons of the Forest, it feels like, I don't want to say it was a cash grab, but it was like an easy way for them to make money because they weren't making any more money from the Forest anymore. So they just basically take the framework of the original game, change a couple of things, throw out this weird story, and make a bunch of money, and then they're going to release it 1.0. They'll take credit for releasing it in 1 year. But if you're releasing something that's underwhelming and not even as good as the original game they released, I'm not sure that's something to praise. So anyway, that's just kind of my thoughts on Sons of the Forest. Let me know if you're going to be playing the game on 1.0 or if you're going to be checking out Nightingale in the comments down below.